The halt in British final assembly of the Eurofighter Typhoon represents a watershed moment in the history of the United Kingdom's aerospace and defence industrial base. It is not simply the end of a production cycle, it is the potential unraveling of decades of accumulated technical expertise, workforce specialization, and sovereign manufacturing capacity that has underpinned Britain's position as a leader in military aviation since World War II. This development brings with it a cascade of implications, technical, economic, strategic, and geopolitical, that stretch far beyond the perimeter fences of the BAE Systems Warton facility where Typhoons were once assembled. The Eurofighter Typhoon was the product of a landmark collaborative program between the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Designed during the Cold War and first flown in the 1990s, the jet was conceived as a multi-role air superiority fighter with adaptability for precision strike missions. Each partner nation contributed to its development and production through a workshare system based on initial procurement commitments. The UK, through BAE Systems, was responsible for large portions of the fuselage, avionics integration, and final assembly for a significant portion of aircraft delivered to both domestic and export customers. For over 30 years, the Typhoon served as both a cornerstone of UK defence strategy and a symbol of industrial and technological excellence. However, with the completion of the final aircraft from the Qatari export order, the UK's Typhoon final assembly line has gone dormant. No new orders from the Royal Air Force have been issued since the Tranche 3 batch more than a decade ago, and no export contracts have yet materialized to sustain operations. The consequence is a complete cessation of British Typhoon final assembly, a process that once engaged thousands of engineers, technicians, quality inspectors, program managers, and support staff. This halt is not merely an industrial hiccup, it is a strategic vulnerability. Fighter jet assembly is not an interchangeable industrial activity. It involves deep supply chain integration, strict airworthiness certification processes, high-precision engineering, advanced materials manufacturing, and cutting-edge systems integration. Once the practical knowledge and infrastructure supporting these tasks are lost, they are exceedingly difficult and expensive to reconstitute. Unlike civilian industrial processes, defense aerospace manufacturing is tightly bound by regulatory, security, and technological thresholds that cannot be recreated quickly or easily, especially in a crisis or conflict-driven procurement environment. Even as the UK retains some involvement in the Eurofighter program, such as through continued component production and the implementation of major upgrade programs to in-service aircraft, these roles are not sufficient to preserve the full spectrum of capability. Final assembly is the culmination of the entire design, manufacturing, and integration process. It is the point at which all component work converges into a functioning weapons platform. Without it, the UK risks downgrading from a full-spectrum fighter aircraft producer to a subcontractor in larger multinational programs. Adding further complexity is the potential loss of critical supply chains that orbit the Typhoon assembly ecosystem. A vast array of small and medium-sized enterprises across the UK have supplied parts, services, software, testing tools, and subsystems to support Typhoon production. These businesses face deep uncertainty. With no assurance of future demand, many may downsize, shift toward commercial aerospace markets, or shut down entirely. The fragmentation of this supply base would have consequences for any future combat aircraft program, especially the next-generation GCAP, Global Combat Air Program, which is still in the early phases of design. The UK government has promoted GCAP as a successor to the Typhoon, intending to field a sixth-generation combat aircraft by the mid-2030s, while this ambition remains on track in terms of bilateral and trilateral collaboration with Japan and Italy. The industrial and workforce continuity required to bridge the gap between the end of Typhoon assembly and the beginning of GCAP production is now at severe risk. With a likely gap of 7 to 10 years before GCAP enters low-rate initial production, there is a significant danger that the UK will lose irreplaceable workforce capacity during this dormant period. This production pause also intersects with the UK's wider defence strategy and procurement philosophy. Recent years have seen a shift toward acquiring off-the-shelf or foreign-built platforms, a trend that provides short-term capabilities but undermines domestic manufacturing sovereignty. While such purchases can be cost-effective, they reduce control over intellectual property, restrict upgrade pathways, and eliminate domestic economic benefits. In the Typhoon's case, this shift away from continued domestic procurement has directly led to the production halt. Without consistent orders from the Royal Air Force to maintain baseline throughput, the industrial model becomes overly dependent on volatile export opportunities, an inherently unstable foundation. One of the most discussed potential lifelines for Typhoon production is a possible export order from Türkiye. Turkish defense officials have indicated interest in acquiring approximately 40 Eurofighter Typhoons. A deal of this size could support years of assembly work and help preserve industrial skills ahead of the GCAP program. However, the Eurofighter is a jointly managed program, and all four core nations must approve any third-party export. Germany has previously blocked potential exports to Türkiye over political considerations, and no indication has been given that this stance will change in the near term. Unless the political logjam is resolved at the European level, the UK cannot act independently to finalize a sale, even if it were willing and capable of fulfilling the order. In the absence of new orders, the outlook is stark. Job losses could be widespread not only at BAE Systems but across the extended industrial network that supports fast jet production. Critical test facilities, integration labs, and specialized tooling may be mothballed or decommissioned. Experienced personnel may exit the defense industry altogether, particularly if alternate employment in the commercial aerospace or automotive sectors becomes more attractive or stable. Rebuilding this capacity for future programs would take years and hundreds of millions in reinvestment, if it can be rebuilt at all. Strategically, this undermines the UK's ability to maintain an independent or even semi-autonomous defense industrial base. It also reduces its influence in future multinational development programs. Countries that do not produce or assemble jets domestically are often relegated to secondary roles in strategic decision-making, capability development, and production share allocation. In future global partnerships, the UK may find itself negotiating from a position of reduced industrial leverage, with fewer options to protect national interests. Moreover, the pause sends a message to international partners and potential customers that the UK's commitment to sustained military aircraft production is uncertain. This perception can affect export competitiveness, influence in alliances, and long-term strategic partnerships. The halt of Eurofighter Typhoon. Final assembly in the United Kingdom is not a routine event. It is a signal of industrial contraction at the highest level of technological capability. It represents a fragile turning point where the future of Britain's defense aerospace sovereignty hangs in the balance. Without immediate policy intervention, whether through new domestic orders, successful diplomatic resolution to enable exports, or an accelerated bridge to future programs, the UK risks losing more than an aircraft line. It risks the disintegration of one of the few remaining sovereign industrial capabilities that underpin national security, strategic autonomy, and international influence in the 21st century.